Okay, as I said, I'm an airport, so I'm trying my best to come across clearly. So tell me if you can hear me. So we're talking about the exhibition today, but we want to put in the wider context. Ongoing project, the McGee Witchcraft 1711 Digital and Creative Project, and this is to take the last trial on Ireland, to wider audiences using digital technologies and creative outputs, video games, VR, graphic novels, plays, musical scores, and digitised original documents. Provides the knowledge and tools for people to explore this topic and wider themes of isolation, gender, inclusion, and disability and social control themselves. So it's based on the last witch trial that took place at the main criminal court in County Antrim, Carrickfergus in 1711. And it centres on the conviction of 8 women and 1 man for the bewitchment and possession of a young educated Presbyterian woman buried on Bath. Pass you over to Victoria.
Hello folks, it's really lovely to be here. I'm also coming live from Heathrow. So Vicky, thanks for controlling the presentation there. So just slide, please, right now. So Andrew and I had thought a lot about how we might brand the research project. We felt that we needed to pick a particular aesthetic that would describe the project. And we don't often do that with research projects, and I think it's actually really important. We wanted to generate a favourable reaction straight away, because this has been a controversial project in Northern Ireland. And I think the experience of branding this has taught us a lot, actually, mostly about the importance of consistency when it comes to dealing with multiple outputs. Because that leads to kind of recognition. You know, all of a sudden our marketing team at UU, who usually don't really know what we're up to, said, oh, that looks like the Witch Project, that must be the Witch Project. So there's a recognition there. And I think maybe that branding heritage reintroduces heritage values from a marketing perspective, and I think that might be kind of helpful. So what we did really is we put together a Pinterest board signifying the look and feel that we want. We wanted something minimalist, monotone, but something quite serious. So the serif heavy medieval font was important. And we had our BA interactive media students design it and kind of pitch us this brand. And it was identity making. The online nature of the project enabled us to kind of build a community right off the bat to encourage public involvement in the preservation of this unique piece of Irish cultural history. Vicky, slide. So it's a digital toolkit, w1711.org, and it encodes what you would think would be more traditional outputs, so historical interpretation of the trial from the leading expert, Andrew. The original documents we've digitized up there, but there's also creative practice, which we have adapted from those more traditional outputs. So we have a graphic novel, a video game, a VR app, a play, an original score, and more, which is why we're at Heathrow, because we're just back from Vegas to get an award for the VR app, and now we're nominated for an award in London for the animation that lives inside the VR app. But what's kind of interesting about this, you can check their website out in your own time, Vicky, slide. So we know that with new heritage settings, there are many benefits of using digital technologies. Vicky, you're just going back to the C there. I think it kind of skipped maybe 5 slides. There's many, many benefits of using digital technologies. It's an ideal choice for representation. Like, you can recreate the story via an animation, for example. However, we've also learned that this kind of creative technology actually has the potential to affect the very meaning of the represented content in terms of the kind of cultural image it creates. So you have to be really, really careful. Just as representation of witches in pop culture has heavily influenced our perception of them, do you know that they're so sexualized and there's so many stereotypes? So in other words, I think right off the bat, we felt like with great power comes great responsibility. So on the one hand, you have visualization abilities afforded by creative tech, and it's unbelievable. But on the other hand, we had to ask ourselves, right, what's the most appropriate way of utilizing this technology, such as the VR, in the service of preserving the events that happened at Island McGee, but in a way that would make them entertaining, but then also there's ancestors are still alive and it's quite a controversial story. So I guess we kind of asked ourselves, what is the impact of this particular media platform, whether it be the VR, the score, the animation, whatever, on the content we're claiming to preserve and communicate? Yeah, and at this point, I guess I would just like to take you on a wee whistle-stop tour through some of the outputs before returning it back to Andrew. So, slide. As part of the project, we created a brand new supernatural graphic novel, which you can see on screen, based on the original documents and Andrew's monograph, Possessed by the Devil. So it's loaded with haunting visuals, as you can imagine. It tells the story of the trial in a creative way, but we really do try to maintain a balance between the creative practice and the historical interpretation. We felt that was really important. So following on from the novel then, slide, we created a serious video game on the trial, and in the video game you take on the role of an investigator. You arrive at Island McGee after the trial has ended, and you're taken through the story by talking to those involved and through cinematic flashbacks. So I think when we reflect on this, you know, each of these outputs, we're attempting to adapt Andrew's academic research on a very important witch trial into more interactive and inclusive formats that have wide intergenerational and cultural appeal, especially for non-academic users. We really, really wanted to reach them. And the wider aim here was what we call a kind of edutainment, that it's both entertaining, but also it educates, and to open up a dialogue around issues that are still affecting the present: gender, discrimination, exclusion, and personal choice during religious and political crisis. So another thing that we did that I thought was kind of interesting in this slide is we produced an immersive play. So essentially what we did is we brought together a multidisciplinary team of staff and students. So you had undergraduate students, postgraduate students, doctoral students and staff from drama, cinematic arts, animation, music, VFX, history. And I guess we wanted to allow the audience to experience the history of the trial while kind of imagining the lives of the accused and what they went through. And Andrew had found a one-act play in the archives about the Island McGee witch trial, and it was called The Witches of Eden. And it was written by a Belfast playwright, Olga Fielding, in 1948. And the gender politics of Fielding's play, its approach to historical accuracy, how it positions the witches as victims, actually prefigures Arthur Miller's The Crucible. So it's really very significant. It was a story of murder, magic, the devil, a community in crisis. Because you can imagine the students had great fun with this, and it offered a unique glimpse into how the witch hunt that claimed over 40,000 lives in Europe played out on Irish shores. So we premiered the play at Halloween at Riverside Theatre, which is a little theatre on campus, and it sold out. But what really surprised us about this particular output, I think, was just how it mobilised people and educated the local community on this witch trial. And it also provided our students, and I love this, with an opportunity to serve as co-producers on a research project, because many of our drama lectures were involved, and this was a research output, a refable research output for them. And the students became heavily involved in kind of scenario building, rehearsals, performances. And I think this allowed the play to resonate with contemporary themes and issues, and that was really cool. We also recorded the play in 360 video and spatial audio so that people who couldn't make it could enjoy it from the comfort of their own home on their VR headset. So that will be ready soon if you're interested. Just moving on to one of the last outputs, just slide, Vicky, please. I'd very much like to kind of showcase a very brief sample of the original score. So this was created and composed by one of our students, a creative musicianship student. His name is Chris McCann. So in Andrew's book, there are very certain noises, we call them terrible noises, associated with an outbreak of demonic possession and accusations of witchcraft in Ireland. There's sounds associated with that. So the score that you're about to hear a sample of actually features abstract field recordings that the student did in Island McGee to imply that the landscape is kind of active and observing and waiting. It kind of takes on a character of its own, while also orchestrating noises associated with the trial. But here's a very brief sample, Vicky, if you could just... So as well, it gets a lot more distorted. It gets a lot hairier and scarier at points, but it's a full album, which the student, devoted to their final dissertation project, and the vocals are covered by an artist from the campus as well as student. So I think what we've learned, and people have commented a lot on the score. So it was in the play, it's in the VR. You're right, it's right in your ears in the VR, and it was played at the exhibition, and it's really resonated with people. And I think that this suggests maybe that sound. Well, we know that sound has a direct impact on human emotion. But I think we find that the sound that we've created has sharpened our brand image in a way. Like people kind of recognize it as part of our project now. So one might kind of suggest that maybe there's a uniqueness to dark history sites that could kind of benefit from a kind of brand sound that's done very carefully, and that it could represent elements specific to that site. Because people can't turn off their hearing. So when it comes to delivering messages, actually, we've learned that sound sometimes has an advantage over the visuals. Just one more slide there, Vicky, please. So the VR app, to explain a little bit about this is the one that we were in Vegas for the Broadcast Association, Education Association Festival of Media Arts. So this is a virtual reality performance of the trial in 1711. And what we do is we put users into the shoes of the accused, those in the margins of society at the time. And we engage with themes like social marginalization, isolation, persecution, wider concepts of being the other, everything that's already in Andrew's research and in his book. So, for example, in the app, you can experience being accused. You know, if you pick up a wine bottle, there's lots of whispering voices because that would have been associated with kind of with being a witch. Lots of voices interrupt and they kind of seek to damage your reputation. Those voices are our drama students, but it's really quite affecting. And then on the other side of the spectrum, so on one hand, you can be accused. On the other side of the spectrum, you experience what it's like to be bewitched. So you levitate and stuff like that. So I think what's really interesting is that these kinds of apps and immersive reality has been criticized so much for promoting discomfort, for promoting an unsettling physical experience, disconnection, disorientation, isolation, and that's seen as a very bad thing. But we were actually utilizing all of that criticism. And that's exactly what we wanted to achieve. We wanted people to feel unsettled and kind of disorientated and isolated. So that's kind of interesting. Before handing on to Andrew, I just want to reflect on a few kind of key points. So lessons learned really from adapting public historical research into new heritage settings. So firstly, the benefits. When you carefully curate creative practice, I think one could say you can illuminate the past. I think we've learned that what works best is histories by scholars who take a bit more of a playful and experimental approach to the interpretation. So when I read Andrew's book, it was during my PhD, 2015, and it moves chronologically, but the contents are already arranged into story beats. So you have a well-respected woman, her arrival, to catch a witch, witchcraft, the wheels of justice, that's the chapters. So I teach filmmaking, and I know that the key to crafting a good story is to break it down into story beats, short, memorable events that move the story forward. So that was already there. So in other words, the creative potential of this particular history just screamed from the page. Like, you know, when you're reading something that could be creatively adapted, there was already a big inciting incident. The stakes rose rapidly, and so on. So in the graphic novel, we illuminate the past by creatively adapting what was said to have happened at 9/11. We didn't change any characters. No characters, names, dates, locations, or major events are invented. And some stuff in there is so scary, you would swear it's been invented. It's not. It's all based on historical research and what was said to have happened. Yet sometimes it was critical for us to deliberately and creatively, move away from fidelity. Timelines were condensed a bit and some things were conflated. So a supernatural attack that might have lasted 3 months actually takes up about 2 pages in the graphic novel. The second key point I just want to make is around the importance of infusing historically influenced creative practice with some kind of contemporary thematic resonance. Slide, Vicky. So Andrew's book was already inherently chock full of possessed by the devil, with concerns and fears and issues of the past. But those could all be related to the present in order to further understand both. So one of the things that really came through was the convicted women's agency. They were really resistant. Their poverty, their marginal status, their disabilities, and the wider political and religious turmoil that led to this just hothouse of fear and panic. And the story of Alan McGee felt really timely. We kicked off the project during the Me Too movement. We kicked off the graphic novel. And women were still protesting across the globe against Trump. There was political polarization, isolation. Fear was triggering a widespread interest in the supernatural, the mystical, the magical. And I think this infused our creative practice with a real contemporary thematic resonance, as did some of our key panels. So one shot comes to mind, slide, Vicky. And it's a panel of the witches' faces, and they look really anguished and angry. Vicky, I think you maybe missed one there. And the reader is obliged to, back again, the reader is obliged to look at the accused women straight in the eye, and their fixed gazes issues a kind of powerful and direct demand, and they might be called today nasty women, right? And we really wanted to give voice to that, like they were angry. We also utilized horror as genre, which is my own expertise, but it's just especially useful for examining power, repression, the forces that threaten people in society, particularly women. So just 3 more briefer points. The next one is around authenticity and acceptability. So I think we have to remember that historically influenced creative practice like this is altered according to the wider concerns of the society in which it's produced. That just happens quite naturally. And this affects how it's understood by an audience. So in a review of a graphic novel by Ollie McCollum from Comic-Con, he celebrates the fact that it's rendered in a way that doesn't place judgment on anyone, not even the accuser. And we did that really purposefully. It felt like a highly suitable approach to such an unnuanced and volatile era to provide this kind of nuanced take. So we took a very historically literate approach to the practice. Vicky, slide. We provided our illustrator with a list that you'll see here on the screen of characters, all real people. We provided thick descriptions of them, their age, physical appearance, personality traits from the surviving historical documents. We even used written testimonies given under oath to guide our dialogue. So it allowed the creative practice to become useful as a means of kind of informing and critiquing the audience's understanding of history, I think, in a meaningful way. Next slide, Vicky. So fourthly, and almost finally, I promise I finish on Epson, we found that a strong historical aesthetic was really critical to further others' understanding of the past. Here's some stills from the VR project. I think it's imperative for historically influenced creative practice to utilize like a historical aesthetic. It's really, really important. And to use associative iconography. So the mise-en-scène has to be right. It has to kind of conjure an image of the time to generate a recreation of the historical events. So in the VR app that you see in front of you, we have high quality immersive renderings of the actual locations associated with the trial in the graphic novel. Slide, Vicky. Every single architectural dwelling in town is a carefully studied rendering of reality. And we believe that, you know, when you utilize such a robust historical aesthetic, it allows for the creation of a kind of modern perspective within that iconograph framework of history. So this has the effect, I think, of potentially allowing the audience to relate that bit more directly to the themes within the narrative. And location's really useful as well for just developing an understanding of daily life during a specific historical period. So it's just something to have a think about. Fifthly and finally, what seemed really crucial was to just generate a kind of feel of the history in each creative output. I think the feel is very useful. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but it's very useful for further developing an understanding of the various social dynamics within the wider society. So you can't help but kind of have a glimpse of social class and gender when you're kind of working through these outputs. So in the graphic novel, in the video game, special attention is paid, for example, to the feel of the costume, because Andrew found in his research that stained cloth actually marked these women out as witches, and their person clothing. So in other words, we created a historically literate interrogation into the unique dynamics of the people at the time. So before handing over to Andrew, I've got 2 minutes left. I just want to take a moment to demystify the VR storytelling process. Slide, Vicky. Because I know when we hear creative technologies, we hear of VR, we think of technical wizardry and a shed load of money. And here is our story map for the VR project. We know that storytelling in VR now is like the next frontier for human narrative, but it's not really rocket science, right? So the VR medium relies on the same storytelling principles as other narrative screen media, but we would like to advocate for taking a kind of narrative approach, a kind of cause and effect, which is just like that typical Greek drama element. It's giving the user a consequence for their actions. We think that's central to a successful VR experience. So anything the user touched, the objects around the screen here, there was a consequence for that related to the trial. So we wanted to give people a real sense of what it meant to be persecuted, of that feeling of being disorientated, confused, alienated, and even nervous when you have the headset on because you know that everyone is against you. So finally, slide. I'd like to just finish up with a few wee reflections on historically influenced VR. That's my drama students you see in the background there recording some of the voiceover. And one of the cool things is that their voiceover was guided by the original documents, the testimonies, and they said, no way, no one said this. They definitely did not say this to each other. And we said, yes, they did. So they were utterly shocked, but such applications allow individuals to immerse themselves completely in an important historical event. Then you put that headset on and the themes associated with it, and you get to experience the past from a first-person perspective. So we think the VR and the other mediums allowed us to bring an important piece of history to life in a way that would engage people, in the 21st century. And it allowed us to tap into an essential piece of our own heritage and for people to navigate it, but in an interactive way. And they could also navigate the moral choices and dilemmas in accusing someone of witchcraft in the early modern world. Like, their minds weren't made up for them. They could kind of work through that themselves. So we think when used responsibly and with accuracy at the kind of forefront, VR in particular can bridge the past and present. It could bridge a site and its visitor, especially when it comes to communicating, so much that is intangible cultural heritage. So some questions you might ask yourself when you are making a piece of creative practice that is historically influenced: does the new output reveal an awareness of how the historical events are constructed? Like, for example, in the graphic novel, some people will read that just chronologically, and some people will read from right to left and kind of skip panels, and it says something about how stories are constructed and how events are told. Another question you might ask yourself is, does it reveal an awareness of the context of the event it depicts? And how can the new output help to critique, inform, and aid in the audience's own understanding of the events? So I'm 30 seconds over, and I'm passing over to Andrew.
Thank you very much, Victoria. So I'm going to talk about the history and the archives, but I'll also, next slide please. Thank you. I'm going to talk about the exhibition itself, okay? So for me, this project represented truly collaborative public history, and it's a move away from disseminative public history. So if disseminative public history is based on the form and nature of the transmission of historical knowledge to historical wider audiences, collaborative public history is where the public participation is greater and all parties involved, including the professional historians that become agents of the historical creation. So this, for me, this project's a step change from the traditional disseminative public history I've been doing, right? When I was working in front of the camera or the microphone, or behind the scenes, a historical consultant, script editor, and location scout on blogs, podcasts, TV and radio, and public talks about, well, usually witchcraft. So in this project, I became less an interpreter of my own written work, published work, and more a co-producer of creative digital products and things that I would never have done before. So thanks to Victoria and everybody else giving me that opportunity, that creative opportunity. So I was creating the digital projects, writing scripts, writing dialogue, deciding on locations and storylines within the app or whatever, or within the graphic novel, researching maps and the topographies for video games. You have to know what the place looks like, and that was a challenge. But also deciding on characterization, imagery, and style, led by the expertise of Victoria. So I was in some strange positions where I was putting on a play or hanging off a rock in Island, trying to get footage to enable 3D modelling for the VR. But I also transcribed and annotated, digitized all the surviving documents, which you can get online for free. And this next slide, please. Back one. Yeah. which you can get, and this was something I was more used to. So all this work involved working very closely with a team of co-producers, as Victoria has said, from industry and researchers and students and staff from across the Faculty of Arts, and Humanities and Social Sciences, music, fine art, cinematic arts, creative audio, drama, history, interactive media. So as a historian, I'm used to working on my own, right? Even when I'm part of large projects and having complete control over my outputs, right? My name's on them, and so I'm in control. But the outputs in this project are the work of many hands. All are informed by historical work and primary documents, as Victoria said, and this allowed me to walk the line as an academic historian, a tightrope even between the process and content, interpretation and documentation, creation and historical accuracy. So when I started in this project, right, with Victoria, about 2018, 2019, I was not unaware the story had the potential to attract large audiences. I'd been working on it for 5 years after the book had been published. Next slide, please. And so the book Possessed by the Devil, published in 2013, and there was a surge of interest in the trial. Right? It was remembered at a local level, and it was remembered in creative work, but it was forgotten officially. And so an avalanche of invites after 2016 came from universities, further education colleges, community groups, women's groups, historical societies, and they all came my way. And I did as many as I could right over the next 5 years, like crazy about in fact. And in 2016, I collaborated with a Belfast-based arts provider to host a series of public talks on Irish witchcraft and LMG trial. And the demand was such that every lecture was sold out. And when it had done, we sold 1,400 tickets. I kept saying to them, you do know I'm a historian, don't you? But anyway, so the unexpected public response revealed the extent of a public appetite in Northern Ireland for knowledge of dark history, not only of this trial, but in general. And there is a large market for dark heritage and dark tourism, but it's largely catered for bricks and mortar attractions, prisons, castles, monuments, museums. And historian Gillian O'Brien attributes the allure of this dark tourism to the fact that, quote, Irish history is full of darkness, and perhaps it's the history that encourages a fascination with the morbid, the melancholic, the miserable, and the maudlin, so many M words. She also locates it within the psyche, kind of prepares. And this is what it's an Irish person, and Scottish. A kind of attraction to these events, and talking about these experiences and writing them in culture. And I think at this point, we're talking 2016, 2017, 2018. It was a novelty. This was the first time many people were hearing about the trial of LMG witches. Now, people knew about this trial everywhere else. No, not this trial. There are modern witch hunts, but not this trial. And so there was no signs, no plaques, no exhibitions, nothing. Very important trial that had just been officially, socially forgotten. And we have hopefully changed this with this project and other things that other people have as well, to some extent, so that it is more out there. So although I was acutely aware that the VR games had to work well within the chosen medium, that the graphic novel had to look good and read well, and the game had to work as a good video game. We have to deal with the subject and subject matter sensitively. This is 50,000 lives. It was real people. 80% of our women. It is really considered dark heritage and dark history. Next slide. And so it's something that a range of people take very seriously. The early modern witch hunts between the 15th and 18th century. Academics, modern pagan witches, those who descended from the actual accused and executed. So it's easy to offend if you don't do it sensitively. But the McGee trial represented difficult history in a very specific way that occurred in what is now Northern Ireland. where the past is often contested and can be extremely divisive. 21st century Northern Ireland is a post-conflict society, having come through 30 years of conflict between 1968 and 1988, and locally it's a trouble. And it has cost many lives and left deep and enduring trauma. It's a country that remains divided and where, religiously and politically informed competing views of the past intertwined with specific notions of British or Irish identity. So it's not surprising that Northern Ireland has a huge supply of difficult heritage and difficult history, where our past is recognised as meaningful in the present, but it's also contested. So in Northern Ireland, moments, events, and figures from history are appropriated and depicted in partial ways to mark territory, reinforce identity, or to not community or belonging. I spoke from Pauline Plugdrew, who works on Northern Irish difficult history and pub history. The experience of conducting the pub history of witchcraft over the course of a decade has taught me that not everybody in Northern Ireland in the present day thought or thinks that the McCollum witches were innocent. That might be hard for our ears to hear, and people when I say this, when they're in America or there's someone else, it's kind of hard to believe. But there are some quite influential people still convinced that the McCollum witches weren't innocent, but had practiced demonically inspired magic and had quite paid the price for it by being imprisoned, put in the pillory. And William Seller, the male witch, who was husband and father to two of the other witches, he was probably executed. So, there's some, it's controversial. You've got some stuff on the slides there. So this was vividly illustrated to me in February 2015 when a wee plaque was put forward to Larne Borough Council to put up to commemorate the witches, and it was objected to by a number of councillors. One in particular said that it was anti-God, to support devil worship, to actually support this putting up of a plaque. So his religious views were informing this kind of decision to put this on this commemorative plaque in 2015. So, I'm in the report, so I don't want to say too much about this. But McKee's association of satanic worship with historic trials can be historicised. We get the RUC special branch working with MI5 and stating black magic sites in East and Northern Ireland. People off the streets, especially kids, and away from areas of military strategic importance. And they're setting up these sites, leaving objects, and putting things in the papers. And Ellen was one of these sites. It was chosen as one of these sites because it's a historical association with the witch trial and its reputation and folklore as a place where supernatural manipulative evidence lingered. So there was kind of a history there as well. So this lack of official memorialisation was compensated for in 2021 by community-based action when the LME Community Development Association commissioned a piece of public art, the White Willow Witch. This is a life-size even sculpture of a woman in long hair carrying a basket sculpted out of sticks and twigs. And it's placed right at the entrance of the peninsula. And the commissioners of this artwork stated they wanted to move on just commemorating the trial and the painful memory of that trial and do something more positive. So she, and the website says, it's on Facebook, and it's posted by members of this ICDA group. She is a nod to Ireland East history of witches, but with a more positive and forward-looking spin. So the unnamed witch that you see in this stick figure is reimagined as a modern pagan white witch who uses spell for good rather than evil. So in 2022, changing the makeup of the council combined with growing need to regenerate the local area through tourism saw the 2015 objection to the commemoration being overturned and laid aside. In March 2023, in a simple muted ceremony, a simple plaque bearing the names of the 9 Engie witches was unveiled at the Club's Visitor Centre in Engie. So, from the final wording, a sentence was taken, but the original wording that was put forward in 2015, a sentence was taken out that explicitly stated that the witches were innocent. So there was still controversy over that, but nevertheless, a change had occurred. The witches were now officially commemorated by a council. This growing appreciation and the potential of that tourism within this new Mid and East Anglia Council that took over from the old council, Land Council, was further realised when it funded the first exhibition dedicated to the tribe. And that's what we were. We were and it was called Reimagining the LNG Witches, an interactive exhibition. It was held at Carrickfergus Museum, where the witches were tried and probably punished. And as was Carrickfergus Museum, County Antrim, in October 2023, it later moved to the Public Record Office of Northern Ireland in Belfast. So I'd been working with the museum staff on this idea of doing an exhibition for a few years. But the current project, when it got the go-ahead, the green light, allowed us to use the outputs of the project, taking a complete new direction. So we wanted, when we were doing this public buy-in, so it's collaborative public history. And with the museums, we hosted a series of events and consultative forums where stakeholders and members of the public were able to discuss the form and content of what's going to be there, apart from our outputs, what else do you want in it, that sort of stuff. And we were taken on board, we did take them on board, we considered them, and afterwards some of the people who were at these events said, I can't believe you actually took that on board and put that in the exhibition. So overall, it was very successful, judging by footfall, formal feedback, anecdotal evidence from staff. And thousands came through the door. It was the biggest they'd ever had. And the most important thing, they were staying for longer than they did. Usually it's in and out, but they were staying for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. You would get all the age ranges. I think there was an 85-year-old man using the game with his granddaughter, which was really nice to see. So I think it worked. And this exhibition blended, next slide please. So this exhibition, this is the new mayor of Carrickfergus, going to be the exhibition blended new technology with more traditional information panels, objects, maps, manuscripts, books and images. But visitors, as we said, could play the game, use the VR, watch the animated film, read the graphic novel, and original documents, which we got bespoke software and put them straight on there, you know. So that, you know, we wanted to put the documents there, but the documents and the historical accuracy is fed through the panels as well. So we told the next slide, please. We told the case on these 13 high-end panels, each of which featured a quote from the original document, and then, you know, beneath it a description. So we go through it, and you can see we're taking stills from the animation to illustrate it as well. So along with the decision to print the exhibition on cloth panels rather than traditional boards, the importance of cloth to the case was reflected in the bespoke art installation. Next slide. And this is called A Collection of Good Unblemished Linen and Woolen Cloth Dated Born conducted 2023. This cloth was made by Alison Galt and Hazel Bruce, lecturers from Textile Art, Design and Fashion at UU. The installation was in response to an article I wrote in 2022, that suggests that the authorities in 1711 tracked down the witches using Mary de Bar's detailed descriptions of their blood stains and battered clothes. So the stained clothes rendered the women more believable, which is just as the visual difference. Some were facially born physically impaired, was what to reflect in their sin, corruption. Their predisposition to evil was also reflected in that knowing of. So it's fitting that the demons that were summoned by the Vikings to possess the bar and attack the godly of Ireland we targeted them through their clean, good cloth. They knotted and dirtied them all with clothes, bedsheets, covers, and curtains. And when I actually read it was formed a small boy in black brown clothes. Hopefully, you got something from that and you could hear me okay. Well, just to conclude then, this was a collaborative public history and creative practice project that took a collaborative interdisciplinary approach to retell an important part of Ireland's hidden history. The history book that behind it, that I wrote, Possessed by the Devil, had started the process of the public recovery of Ireland's witchcraft past, but the current project is able to target a whole new demographic and breathe new life into documents to which it was searched. So the project brought new ground in many ways, just with the feedback. And I think it did exactly what it was.